Welcome, everybody, to episode 0 of the Structural Sense podcast. I am Steve Sansford. He is Ryan from work. And why episode 0? Because this isn't really a real episode. That's coming next week. But this week, we just want to try this out, kind of lay down a format that we're going to use and give you guys a bit of an introduction as to why we're here, what gave us this idea, and where we want to go with it.
So my name is Ryan. I'm actually here. We're here at Fit Club in London, Ontario. Great facility here. This is where I train out of. Some great people here that work here as well. And I've been a personal trainer for the last 6 years. And more or less, I think how this came about was Steve and I were training together. We recently just started training together again. We tried a couple years back, and we'll get into that as we go through the episode.
Let's actually jump back there right now because that's really important.
All right.
And I think that's what led to part of this whole idea as it was. We met 3 years ago in a network marketing business.
Yes.
Through the business, we met. We became quick friends. I remember shortly after we met, I had asked you to meet me at Starbucks one day. Mm-hmm. And I think you thought you were coming to discuss the business that we're in. In terms of when I got there, I said I wanted some personal training tips, some coaching tips, because even 3 years ago, you already been quite successful. And at the time, you gave me some tips, and I think we even worked out once or twice a week.
We did, yeah.
But it didn't work. It didn't stick, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. Like most people who are overweight, and I am, let's be honest, we'll call it the gorilla in the room or the elephant in the room, so to speak, no pun intended. I knew I needed to lose weight. I knew I wanted to lose weight, but something had been missing. I'd been trying it for my whole life, and something was missing. And we discovered what that was not so very long ago, I guess about 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Right over there, we came to a realization of what was missing, because we've been working out now since February.
Yeah.
It is
I would
now
say consistently.
end of April.
Yeah,
we missed a couple of weeks for convention, but we've been working out fairly consistently. And it's going much better this time.
It's going great.
And much smoother this time, and starting to get progress this time. So why don't you maybe jump in and talk about those first few times when we worked out 3 years ago?
Yeah. What I remember of it really was getting started, what we're actually talking about here today and what we're going through as far as our podcast overall is the whole concept of mindset. And, I think that's what it was back then. When it comes down to exercise and it comes down to getting in shape, a lot of people have that whole concept of, right, fit body, fit mind, when in all reality, it should be fit mind, fit body. And that's really what we want to get at. And going back to 3 years ago, I think that's really what it was for yourself. It was one of those ideas that, this is what I think I want to do. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you didn't have the proper mindset or the proper understanding of what exactly it entailed for you to come in and stay consistent at it.
I think 3 years ago, too, I lacked a reason to want to do it. I mean, that's what prompted this whole thing, was you and I having a discussion about the reasons why people want to lose weight, why they want to get in shape, why they want to be more fit. I don't suffer from any of the self-confidence issues that come with most people who are overweight. I don't have self-confidence issues. I don't have image issues. I'm very confident in what I do and what I can do. I don't have any of those issues that I feel that society's pressuring me to lose weight. I just know that it makes sense this time around.
Exactly.
And I had said to you right over there what was different, and your response was shocking, actually.
Yeah. It was just mindset. It was personal development. It was the understanding that when it comes down to it, you just had the proper, more or less, your head on your shoulders in the sense of understanding that you knew that mentally you were strong, so physically you needed to be strong as well. Right? So that's really what it was. We just came together and then we thought about it and we're like, you know what, this would be a good idea to go over.
Yeah. Because 3 years ago, I didn't have any of that personal development. When we started in the network marketing company together, that's very much at the core of what we do is personal development. Mm-hmm. 3 years ago, I didn't have any John Maxwell under my belt. I didn't have any Tony Robbins.
Yep.
I didn't have anybody under my belt that was helping me change the way I was thinking. Mm-hmm. And now that I am, when we were working out the other day and Ryan said to me, it's personal development, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yep.
I said, Ryan, there's your podcast.
Yep.
I'm not in the fitness industry. I'm a client of the fitness industry. But I know a lot about personal development because I've been steeping in it for 3 years. And I said, there's your problem. There's where most people have an issue. They don't put the mindset first.
Exactly.
And that's where the whole idea for this podcast was born. And talk a bit about your desire to do this podcast, because I know that you want to expand your personal training business beyond what we do here in the gym you know, to be able to reach more people, because it's one-on-one time when you're here at the gym.
Yep.
And I know you want to leverage your time. So talk a bit about your idea for this podcast and then where you want to go with the concept of the mind has to be right or the body never will be.
Sure. I think my big part about it, and you know what it is for me, is personal training has always been a passion for me. It's always been something. I mean, I guess really, you know, even when it comes down to network marketing, right? With the business that we're in, it's a lot of just wanting to help people. That's really what it's about. And when it comes down to that, that's a goal that I want to expand, because I mean, in all reality, you do, as a personal trainer, you do have a couple clients here and there if you're working with people specifically. But what I want to do is expand it past that, you know, go online and, you know, just affect more people's lives. That's really what it's about, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So we've been brainstorming this podcast now for probably 2 or 3 weeks, I think. We actually did our first interview here a couple of days ago. It's going to be on next week's episode. Make sure you guys don't miss it. We'll plug it again at the end of the podcast. But first thing we decided we needed to do is we had to come up with a concept. You know, what are the kind of things that we want to do with this podcast or accomplish with this podcast, and took a lot of cues from what you want to do with your personal business, using me kind of as the guinea pig, I guess is the right term.
Right.
You know, so a big part of the podcast, we're gonna have an introduction where we just talk about the week. We're gonna do an update, I think, actually with numbers and possibly photographs, if it doesn't offend anybody like me, you know, on the techniques that we're using to get the results that we're getting. Because if I can get results in a place like this, so can anybody out there. I mean, I know that in my heart. But we also want to talk a lot about the mindset, the things that are affecting my mindset being in here. There's a great segment interview with Mark on next week's show that talks about that in detail. I was certain to ask him that. We want to have like an update. And then what we really want to do is we want to get into question and answers.
For sure.
We want to collect questions from the viewers about mindset, about personal training, and then have Ryan share from his years of experience as a trainer what to do from a physical point of view, and then together with the personal development that we've both been steeped in for so long, maybe offer some other suggestions on tools and resources they could look into. Beyond that, what else are we planning on doing with the podcast?
We'll throw in some tips as well. I'll give you guys some tips as far as, you know, everyday tips for mindset and life versus training, you know, before the gym, in an actual workout, which is very key to it. You know, I have a lot of clients that have a lot of issues when it comes down to coming in here, where, you know, and this is for the average person, right, that goes to work, and when they get off work, they come out and, you know, they really don't want to think anymore. They've just had a long day and they just want to come here and get a workout in. When in all reality, you do have to have that mind to muscle connection. You do have to have that proper mindset to come in here and lift proper weight, so you do get the results that you want, right? And then we'll talk about post-workout too and all the above, right? Just everything, really giving people tips on how to more or less structure their mind around their body, and then in turn get all the results that they want. Right.
That's awesome. I know another big part of the podcast we're doing, because we've already done the first part, is interviews.
Yes.
You know, we come across people, Ryan comes across people in his training business. They're athletes. In this case of next week's episode, Mark Podkaliwangan, he's a professional boxer.
Yep.
We got a clip with him. We sat down, had a conversation about mindset and training. And that's what we want to do every week. We're going to have an interview with a different personality. Some big, some small, most small, you know, just average everyday folk that our viewers can identify with, that might not be me or may not be Ryan, to get their thoughts on mindset and some of the things that they do. And having already done that interview with Mark that you guys are going to see next week, I'm excited about it.
Oh yeah,
he offered
great.
some great tips.
Oh, yeah.
Talk a little bit about Mark, just to preview it for the listeners, because you've worked with Mark for a while. You trained him.
Yeah. Mark and I actually, we've known each other for a very long time. We're both Filipino, so because of that, right, we just are very close as far as the culture is concerned. So we've worked together in the past. Mark's been a big fan of boxing ever since he was little. And, you know, as far as training together, when I first started my personal training business out of one of the big corporate chains here in London, he came to me and he said, you know, I want to work on my conditioning. I want to work on some of my strength, because I have my Golden Gloves coming up. And that was 6 years ago, right? So I worked with him back then for his Golden Gloves. He ended up winning, which was really good. And that's how it really started with him and I. Since then, he's gone to do leaps and bounds. He's gone professional. Gentleman is 10-0.
10-0.
10-0.
I remember. We were
right?
there when he got
we
number
were
10.
there. Hopefully we can get you guys some footage of that as well. And, you know, just as far as his mindset and as far as his character, right, his beliefs really are the fact that the mind is the most important part when it comes down to exercise, when it comes down to everyday life and when it comes down to winning a fight, really.
It's also very important.
Right?
Let's talk a little bit about the name we come up with for the podcast, because we had a couple of bubble teas and we sat down and we really spent a lot of time on that, working out a name that we thought was interesting. We brainstormed. I have pages of notes of scribbles and thesauruses. Wow, that's a tough one.
There you go.
Dictionaries. Just combining different words and trying to find something that encapsulated not just getting the body fit, but starting with the mind, getting the mind right, getting the spirit right, then getting the body right. And we tried to come up with something that dealt with the spirit, the mind, and the body, the whole package.
Yep.
And the word that we came up there was sense.
Yes.
Just a sense
Overall
of
sense. Yes.
sense of well-being, a sense of fitness.
Yep.
I can use fitness
Yeah.
as a verb. But the structural word, really, that one took a little bit longer. But I think it worked out really well because we've known each other so long. I know your philosophy when it comes to training. It is all about structure. So why don't you share a little bit about your training philosophy and where that word structure came from?
Exactly. Yeah. So personally, my own personal training business and what I like to do with all my clients is all based off of structural balancing, all based off of structural mindset. So that's how it came about. And really, when it comes down to it, everybody does have their specific goals and their specific needs, right? Whether it be some sort of rehabilitation, or they want to lose weight, or they want to gain weight, or whatever it is the case may be. But because of certain things that happen to us as we grow, right? We have issues with our body when it comes down to posture and all the above, right? So what I like to do with all my clients is not necessarily just help them with their goals, but also put them in better positioning as far as their posture and all the above and their structure, so that overall they do live a better life. Really, that's what it's about. One of the good coaches, or one of my good mentors that I follow, Charles Poliquin, he says it all the time, right? When it comes down to it, it's more about the structural balancing of the body, because when we're in our deathbed, the reason why we're there is because we're not mobile enough and we're not strong enough. So what we really want to do with everyone is get them in proper structure and proper flexibility, mobility, and strength, so that way they're able to live a healthy life. But why not work on the mind as well? Why not work on someone's mindset, so that way overall, not only do they have a physical fitness, a good physical fitness, but on top of that too, they have a good mindset coming into the gym, leaving the gym, and just overall in life. So I know with majority of my clients, we do talk about even personal development as far as when they leave work and all the above, right? Working in here, I have some people that come in and, at certain times, they just haven't had a good day, right? So, I can't count on my hands the amount of times where I've actually just sat and talked with my clients and just coached them on, their mindset overall in life, and, how the day went, and really just letting them know that, it's not something that they need to take and really dwell on as far as those situations, but move them aside, continue on with life, and work on something that they can progress in, whether it be their life, physical fitness, or whatever.
The whole approach.
Yeah, the whole approach, whole thing.
Good. That's awesome.
Right. So that's the whole concept of structural sense, right?
Makes sense to me.
Yep. Well, hopefully it makes sense to you guys.
Hopefully it makes sense to you guys. Leave a comment and let us know.
Yep.
Last week when we were working out, we were doing a combination of exercises, because you always seem to have me do what almost appear like contradictory exercises.
Yes.
One after the other.
Yes.
And I think last week we were doing face pulls.
Yes.
Followed by the sled.
Exactly.
And you said to me, do you know why we do them back to back like that? And I said, no. I said, knowing you, it has something to do with balance or structure. But why don't you tell us? Because I told you, hang on to that, don't answer it, and tell me now. So I'm going to get the answer the same time you guys are going to get the answer.
For sure.
To the question, why did we do that? Why do we always mirror up the exercises, or whatever the term is that you have for it?
So depending on the person's goals, for someone like Steve, what exactly are your goals again? Just to make sure.
Right. So our goal, I believe, is to get down to 20% body fat.
Awesome. Right. So we know that something like weight management or weight loss is your goal.
Yeah.
Right. But on top of that too, as far as some of the work you've done in the past, majority of it has been desk work, right?
Yeah.
Right. So understanding the body and how it works, we know that because you've been sitting so much, right? You do a lot of slouching because you're leaning over, you're writing or you're typing, right? And because of that, you're also sitting. Yeah. So your hips are tight. That's just naturally what's going to happen.
All the things I'm doing right now.
Exactly, right? So we understand that in the fitness world, we know that how that works, right? So when it comes down to the whole structural balancing in the fitness industry and what we want to do, right? The reason as to why we did face pulls and then from there we went to a sled was, one, we can get you structurally balanced in the upper body, get those shoulders pulled back, right? Get those external rotators moving, right? So that way your posture sits better. But on top of that too, we can also work on your goal set, which is weight loss, right? So we can keep your heart rate up, your cardiovascular system working, right, by using the sled as well, right? And on top of that too, because you're doing an upper body and a lower body movement, right? From there, because of the transition, you can have less period as far as rest, right? And then increase the actual time of work. So we'll actually do a good 5 sets in that because we can, as far as, getting one part of the body working, getting the other part of the body resting, and then vice versa, right? And that works both sides of the spectrum, whether it be your weight loss as far as your goal, and then our goal of structural balancing.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. If you have any questions you want Ryan to answer, make sure you send them in to us on Twitter. You can tweet to us directly at Structural Sense, or just use the hashtag Structural Sense. And we're going to compile those questions for every week's episode and have Ryan pick some out and answer them, and hopefully we'll get to yours as well. As far as social media goes, you can find Structural Sense on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Structural Sense is the username for all 3 of those. Me personally, I spend my time on Instagram at Steve Sansford. And Ryan?
I'm at Ryan from Work, which is a simple one for you guys to know.
At Ryan from Work.
Exactly. And then my Facebook is Regador Personal Training, which is my own personal training business, which I've just started up as well as far as my Facebook page.
If there are any notes on whatever platform you're listening to this on, whether it's YouTube or SoundCloud or any type of podcast or right from our website, I'll make sure to have all of those links to the social media in the description below. That way you guys can just find it a little bit easier. So one of the other segments we're going to have along with my personal goals and the workout routines we do is nutrition, because that's a big part of any weight loss program, or I guess really life in general when you stop and think about it.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot where I was going with that. But, saying I heard, and maybe you know who came up with it or who coined it originally, but you can't outrun a bad diet. It's something I've always heard, and that's always a challenge I've had. I do enjoy food, you can probably tell. But we know that's important, and why don't you talk a little bit about that and where we're going to try to focus on that as far as the updates we're going to do on the podcast, how we're going to do it.
Sure. There's 2 things I really want to touch on when it comes down to that. The first one is that whole concept of diet, right? Everybody always talks about, I'm going on a diet.
It's a 4-letter word, isn't it?
Exactly, right? But the big thing when it comes down to diets is never about a diet. Right? Diets lead to yo-yo dieting and all the above, and they're not something that you could hold, right? Normally when someone says, I'm going on a diet, that means that they're looking to do something very short term and then return back to their old frame of mindset, right? So really what you want to focus on is an overall lifestyle, right? And really fit as far as your life, right? Fit in how your food and your eating goes into your life, right? I have a lot of people that say, I just don't have time. Well, it's not an issue of time. Right. We know this. It's an issue of priority, right? And that always goes down to the whole concept of mindset, right? Now, let's just be honest, right? If it comes down to it, let's say, for instance, one of us had a heart attack right now and we weren't eating proper, right? And the doctor said to you, if you don't change your eating, you're going to die, right? Would you now all of a sudden make that a bigger priority? Would that now fit into your time?
Absolutely.
Right? So it's never an issue as far as time. It's an issue of the priority behind it, right? So that's the big thing as far as when it comes down to the whole concept of diet that I want to touch on. And the other thing that I want to touch on too is, I have a lot of people that are on certain meal programs or, want something that specifically fits them as far as their goal set, which is easy to do. But the big thing behind it is they're so stressed out about it, right? So they'll come in here, for instance, I'll have a client come in here and, they'll tell me, I ate bad on this day. And, and it's been 3 or 4 days since I've seen them, right? Because it's the weekend and they tell me and they're still thinking about it. And I ask them, the big question I ask a person in that situation is there anything you can do about it now? And the answer is always no. So in that position, why worry about it?
Right.
So you should never really sit there and worry about your eating. If you're going to eat something bad, right, move on. Because there's nothing you can do about it, right? A lot of it is just making sure that you maintain proper eating after that point, right? Sticking with something like meat, vegetables, nuts, and fruit is what I like to do with the majority of my clients, but also making sure that they can eat, something enjoyable every now and then. Because I mean, let's be honest, there are a lot of enjoyable things in life today.
There are a few.
Exactly. Right. So it's not an issue of always cutting them out. It's just moderating everything specifically and making sure that, you know, majority of the stuff that you are eating is the better stuff in life.
Good. That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
one other thing I know we want to do with the podcast is we want to close it out every week with Ryan's tip of the week, we'll call it. We'll probably come up with a better name. But for right now, we're going to call it Ryan's tip of the week. So as we close out our episode 0, the first ever episode of the Structural Sense podcast, what's the one tip that you want to share with anybody who happens to be listening?
It's a great question.
I'm putting him on the spot. We originally agreed we were going to plan these out ahead of time,
Yeah.
but I forgot. So he's 100% on the spot for this. So make it up.
I would say just be attentive, right? Be attentive in life, be attentive in your exercise, right? Make sure that your focus is on what exactly you want, whether it be, you know, a specific goal as far as exercise, a specific goal as far as, you know, wanting something in your career, whatever the case may be. Just make sure that you stay focused in it, stay attentive in it, right? And really go for what you want, right?
If I could sum that up, I'd say make sure that your daily actions are congruent with your long-term goals.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening to the episode 0 of the Structural Sense podcast. We're going to see you guys all right back here next week. We've got a great show lined up already. Professional boxer Mark Pug Kelly One Gun is going to be our guest for our interview segment. We filmed that already. It's exciting. You're not going to want to miss it.
Oh, yeah.
Just before we sign off, we just want to leave you guys with one thought, one philosophy that's going to carry us through this podcast and everything we try to do. The mind must be right, or the body never will be. We'll see you guys next week.
Take care.